Hello, everybody. It's nice to see you. It's great to see some male allies as well in the audience, and I appreciate you joining us. So my name's Sunaina. I'm a global inclusion strategist. I've been a diversity, equity, and inclusion professional for over 15 years. I've worked all around the world with different industries, organizations, sectors. I love what I do. I bring a very human approach to this work. I don't believe in this being a blame game. We're all in it together and we can all fix it together, I hope. So I come from the human difference. And today I'll be speaking to two very experienced professionals from the supply chain industry. So we have Amandine and we have Beatriz. So please, Amandine, if you could do your introduction.
Yeah, so I'm Amandine Bourdon. I live in France, in Lille, in the north. I am currently head of France last mile delivery and returns in Decathlon. One peculiar fact about me is that I backpacked for a year across the world, and since 9 months, I'm a happy mother.
To a very cute little boy. We've had pictures all yesterday. Thank you, Beatriz.
Yes, hello, everyone. My name is Beatriz Perez, as you can tell from my accent. I'm from Mexico City, from Latin America, but specifically from Mexico City. I'm currently living in Amsterdam due to work reasons. So I work at PVH as a senior manager for supply chain development, and that's what brought me to Amsterdam as I got transferred, happily transferred. Something personal about me is that I love to travel. I love to meet new people, experience new cultures, backgrounds, ethnicities, which I think it's the fun part of the world, right? That we are all different, and that I take it to the companies. That's where diversity can enrich every company, every industry, every area within the business.
Amazing, thank you. I do want to point out that while this session is called Elevating Women in Supply Chain, the intent of this is to be an entirely inclusive approach. So we are respectful of all people who identify as female. But the experience that we're talking about today is Amandine and Beatriz's personal experience, so their lived experience through their careers in this industry. So to that point, can we have a brief overview of your career path?
Yeah, so I started my career 11 years ago at Amazon. I worked for 4 years in operations, both in fulfillment centers and delivery station. Then I took my gap year to travel, and then when I came back, I transitioned to a role as a transport manager, and then I moved to a project management role. In this role, I was working on a program that was aiming to launch small businesses in last mile delivery. I launched this program in France, and then I managed it at European level. And after 10 years at Amazon, I was thinking, like, what's next for me? I had my son, and this is when I joined Decathlon to see what's outside. And I moved from a pure player company to an omnichannel company, which is a completely new world for me.
Amazing, thank you. Beatriz.
In my case, I started a long time ago, 20 years ago, back in Mexico, doing logistics. So that gave me the opportunity to open offices, be part of the group that opened offices in all South America, Chile, Peru, Argentina, which gave me a broader view of the business throughout Latin America. Then before I left Mexico, I was heading a big portion of supply chain. So besides logistics, customs, trade compliance, I was in charge of purchasing and forecasting. Smaller company, but it was really good to be in charge of all this part of business. And then I got the opportunity to be transferred. I took that chance, came to the Netherlands, to the headquarters. So it's I came with the same company, of course, but it's totally different, right? It's different working at the headquarters from working as a market, which then Mexico became my market. I was in charge of international markets. Mexico was one of my markets. So from 120 employees to almost 2,000 employees. So big difference, but now here I'm totally focused on the project-based for supply chain operations. So from the inbound all the way to the outbound, including order processing and delivery to final customer. And so my experience has brought me all across the world, right, to know a lot of markets and seeing that the constant is that I can confirm that we need more women within supply chain, right? And that's a constant everywhere in the world, even in the Netherlands, believe it or not. But we are also getting there. It's getting better and better. So maybe not at the speed we would want to, but we are getting there.
That's amazing. So, just between the two of you, there is so much diversity and variations within your career paths. So, I've really enjoyed getting to know you over the last few days as we've prepared for this. So, the World Economic Forum have said that it will take 131 years to achieve global gender parity. So, for me, obviously, that's an incredible statistic, but for me, that brings even more importance on the fact that this is everybody's responsibility. This is not just mine, men's, the business. This is everybody that needs to come on board and work together for this. So that said, we're going to bring three potential actions that different people across the business or different populations across the business can take in helping to elevate women in supply chain. So if we start to look at female representation, developing and also bringing in women into supply chain roles, what do you feel the business's responsibility is in this conversation?
Yeah. So first, so when I did my master in logistics, we were 22 women and only 3 men in the class. So I don't really understand what's happening between studies and now, why we don't have women on the top. But we can see that companies are changing. For example, at Decathlon, the CEO is a woman and many VPs are women. This is one of the reasons why I applied to this company, because I get to have role models to look out for. But one point that is important, one of the responsibility of the company is when they have a panel for a promotion or a panel for interviewing an external to come to the company. It's important to have a diverse panel who is interviewing, who is deciding, who is making the decision. When I say diverse panel, is women, but also other minorities. It's important that everyone around the table who is making the decision is diverse.
I love that. And I think also you talked about having in early careers, seeing a lot of female talent, but that dispersing as you go up. And I think that's because the progression piece is tricky too. So whilst promotion panels need to be diverse, perhaps hiring panels for experienced hires can also be effective as well in bringing more women into more senior roles so that you do see more representation of all levels of diversity. Yeah. Thank you. Beatriz?
Yes, I will add that it's also important, and a lot of companies are doing it, right, to have business resource groups. To upwork women, to represent every business group. And but the most important thing for me is not just to have these VRGs, but that we become active on them, right? That we participate, that we help them push for internal policies, for KPIs. We love KPIs in supply chain, right, and everywhere. So this should also have KPIs to see if we are really progressing or not. It's important for me as well to have sponsors on management level, on a senior level, on these VRGs, so they can be our voice. They can speak for us. They can represent us and pull women up, right? In this case for women. And also I have a cliche statement that if you want you need to do something different if you want a different result, but it's really true. Because I want to ask you, the audience, one question, right? You as a hiring managers, would you be brave enough or willing to start interviewing? Maybe some are doing it already on a gender blind base on resumes. Can you raise your hand if you are? Which is thank you so much.
Can I just ask?
Yes, of course.
Is that you'd be willing to? Or you're already doing? So willing to, who is already doing that? Oh, hello. Okay.
Interesting.
So when the mic goes around, I'd love to hear about your experiences. Thank you.
Exactly. Would be super interesting because again, do something different to get a different result. And this can also lead us to look at how we are hiring, right? Maybe we are not looking at someone because of an unconscious, but still bias. So to be more conscious of what we are doing and what we can achieve.
Thank you. And I think that point around employee resource groups, people networks, there's different names for this, but I think they bring power in themselves for change, but having allies on board, so not just a women's network for women. I think it's really important to be inclusive and ensure that you have everyone at the table, because it's everybody, again, everybody's responsibility to create that change. But also respect intersectionality, because you're a working parent, you and I aren't. So there's different levels of what we're bringing and the needs that need to be met. So I think the employee resource group is great. We just need to be able to manage that effectively. Thank you. So that was the businesses, some thoughts around how the business is responsible. Another action that we discussed was how leaders, all leaders, male and female, but what is the role of all leaders in driving more gender diversity across the supply chain?
Yeah, so it's so I can complement a bit on my previous answer, right?
Sure.
Because I've mentioned that it's important that leaders become sponsors of these BRGs, but not. It's important to also become a mentor or a coach on on an individual level, right? That they do commit to also become part of these programs, because that's the way they will help people to become better and to achieve their goals. As well, they need to look, leadership and managers need to look, of course, they are looking at people that is being promoted because they were already promoted, right? Because of a performance, a good performance, but also we need to start looking at people that is not being promoted and ask ourselves why they are not being promoted. Right? Is it a performance issue? Is it again, like a not parity and a issue, or what is it happening? So again, we can just be more conscious of what we are doing is the right way to do it. And also, what I would say is that they should train, because we know there is a lot of trainings, right, going around in companies. So this should continue, but for all levels of the company and for everyone, men and women at the same time. Why? Because that's the way we are raising this culture. We are building up this culture of having a pool of diverse talent to be promoted, right? But they need some more equity and more parity of diverse candidates.
I think training is really important. I'm going to come to you in a minute,
Yeah.
Amandine, because Amandine is like, who is even at this training? Do we even have the right people who are getting trained, or is it the same old faces all the time? But I think what type of training is important as well. I think capabilities building, the leadership style that we need today is very, very different to where we've come from. So analytical, like strategic, that's great, and the business still needs that, but the people need a very new style of leadership, and I think that's really important. I think empathy, to have safe spaces, psychological safety, to remove judgment from our cultures is really, really important if we're going to enable everybody to thrive. But Amandine, to your point about who is even at these trainings.
Yeah, so on trainings, I had this conversation with one of my team members a few weeks ago. So many companies have women's leadership trainings set up, and the people going to those trainings are women. And it's good for us because we get to talk about those stuffs together, we get to not feel alone, but then it's only between us.
Yeah.
So we need to ensure that during those trainings, we also have diverse people attending, because if they don't know about our struggles, how could they empathize with us? So
Completely. And it's all levels of diversity, isn't it? Even ethnically, culturally, you need different people being part, again, of the conversation.
also on one of the other
course.
responsibility, so one of my responsibility as a leader is to ensure that women also get the high valued project. When we have a project that is popping up, women are less likely to raise their hand and to say, okay, I am going to take this one. So my role as a leader is to ensure that they will dare to raise their hand and that they will take those projects. When I say women, it's also other people in my teams, because I have people in my teams who are more shy, and I need to encourage them also. So it's everyone, but ensure that everyone has the opportunity to get those projects with high value results and with so they can shine in the company.
But that's a perfect example of the leadership style that's relevant for today, right? You've created a culture where you're encouraging people to come forward. You're not just defaulting to sort of giving iconic projects and opportunities to the same people because it's similarity bias. You know the same people, you trust them, so you continue in that churn of giving them the iconic opportunities. But by creating the right culture for your team, they themselves have a hunger and an appetite that they then want to project and actually volunteer for stuff. Because we've also talked about another reason why women aren't getting into leadership roles, and I think this is across industries. I would not limit this just to this industry. But when you get to senior roles beyond director, so vice president, C-suite, it's more often than not the fact that women don't always have global, cross-market, cross-geography experience that they need to get there. But a lot of, majority populations do. And that comes back down to these grassroots. What are the iconic projects? And you also talked about the fact that both of you, I think, rather than focus on immediate career progression, you focused on breadth of experience across your levels of expertise. So you spoke about that yesterday.
Yeah, so I think that evolving in a company looks different from everyone. Success is different for everyone. We don't have to be focused on only moving vertically. We need to focus on how to move smarter. Twice in my career, I had mentors who told me, Amandine, if you are frustrated, it's because you want to go too fast. Just slow down a little bit, enjoy the ride, it will make you stronger. And I thank them for that because it helped me to zigzag between roles and broaden my perspectives and my understanding of the full supply chain. And also, when you are getting individual contributor roles, it is forcing you to understand how to influence without authority, and those skills are very important to move to director roles. So yeah, just don't focus on leading a team, moving vertically, but broaden your experience to have a full understanding of your job.
I'm going to quote you on that for some social media updates later, but how to move smarter is definitely, I think, a key takeaway. So that takes us nicely into the last action that we're bringing to this session, which is about us as women taking ownership of our careers. And there's something that was trending on social media. It's still out there, but over the last few years, it's called the confidence gap. And I'd be interested in how many people in the audience agree. I have a challenge with this, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So social media started trending a couple of years ago. A perspective, let's say, that men apply for jobs when they're 60% confident. So there's a few nodding heads here. When they're 60% confident of success of getting the job. Women will apply for the job when they're 100% confident. And I would actually say 200% confident and 5 friends on their backs nudging them and pushing them to even apply and be considered. How many would agree with that statement? That men need to be 60% confident, women need to be 100% confident. How many people disagree? Okay, thank you.
One person.
Who was that? No, so perfect. Okay, well, I'd love to talk to you about that later, but it's an interesting perspective, and as I say, it's been trending for a couple of years now. So what's your advice in overcoming what's known as the confidence gap? So what's the individual responsibility? We've talked about the business responsibility, how all our leaders can be thinking and acting differently and making different decisions. What's my responsibility?
Well, first, I think that our responsibility is to dare to go for it and to help your confidence. I would say, go build your network. inside your company, but also outside. If you talk more and more with people, you will get more confidence as you go.
Can I jump in a bit
Yeah.
on the networking? So it's super important. And if you look outside, there is a lot of networking organizations nowadays for supply chain or for in general. And it's important to join, not join, or if you want join, but also be part of, networking with men, women, but there is also quite some out there just for women, women in supply chain specifically, which we've talked about the importance of men as an ally, but it's also like we need this sisterhood support that you were mentioning, right? Sometimes we just need someone that understands our fears from our perspective. So that's good to join those ones as well. And it's really important to network outside your company, right?
So it's
For any
almost like
reason.
a network where there is empathy and
Exactly.
understanding, but also a network where there is advocacy and allyship that can
Indeed.
help fuel you. Yeah, absolutely. Amandine.
No, I would say like to build your network, come to Deliver everywhere every year.
Well, I'm really proud of Deliver because I do believe that this is the first diversity and inclusion conversation that has been on stage at Deliver. We hope it's the first of many, so we rely on your feedback to help encourage that. But yeah, really proud to be here and be on stage today to be able to talk to you. So thank you both. Is there anything else you want to share before I hand over to
I
our
would
audience?
say, like going back to your introduction for this section, like that we apply just when we are 100% confident. That's where we can act immediately on ourselves, right? So I would say, let's believe in ourselves, self-confidence, and be assertive when we ask for promotions, for salaries or whatever we want to develop, career development within the company. We need to be more assertive, more because men are also more assertive on this side, right? And we can. It's just that we need to believe in ourselves, so we get rid of this confidence gap.
And that's why, again, allyship is good, right? Because you need
Exactly.
that safe space to go and say, guide me through this. Like, people that we see demonstrating these capabilities well, it's great to partner up with and learn from and exchange. I think reverse mentoring is awesome
Indeed.
because everyone has the benefit of that relationship when there's
Indeed.
mutual learning.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe I would like to share my experience when applying at Decathlon because I think it's very showing what type of culture we need for women to be able to feel confident. So I was 9 months pregnant on my couch, scrolling on LinkedIn. And then I saw this job position opening that was ticking all the boxes for my dream job. And I was like, do I apply in my condition? I'm going to have my baby in a week. But then I applied and they were super comprehensive. They waited for me to give birth and they waited like 2 weeks for me to be back. And I was breastfeeding my baby. So the leader was hiring told me, well, I am blocking 2 hours in my calendar. You can call me whenever you want into those 2 hours for the first phone interview. And he is a man. So it was super good for me because I was able to find the right time for myself to apply for to call for this first interview. And then they were super comprehensive to find the right time slot for me for the rest of the process. And also, they allowed me to have the time I needed before going back to work. So I think that one of the responsibility of the companies is to provide the right environment for women when they have a baby or another event in their life.
Without a doubt. And I think that's what a great example of allyship. And men are parents too, right? So that is again why they make great allies in these conversations, because their perspective, their empathy, their understanding is very powerful in changing the experience for you. But I think a very positive example of how it can be done right. With that, and I heard a bell somewhere, are there any questions from our audience or any comments or any thoughts? Thank you.
First of all, thank you. I think from all of us, this is the first time I see a talk in the supply chain world about womanhood. So thank you for being here. So inspiring. And to go back to your point, Amandine, about building your network, I think this is such a nice way to put it, because it's so hard to find role models in our world, right? Because we're a bit underrepresented. And it's hard to find people we can relate to, but the more we talk to people and we hear stories like yours, that this is a scenario that's totally possible, it opens our brain a lot more, and it allows us to think, but wait, she did it, so then it's possible. And I love that, and I hope we get a lot more of this conversation. So thank you for sharing your experiences.
I really appreciate that, and you've reminded me to also mention that there are a lot of men out there that want to be part of this conversation in a supportive way, but there is a lot of nervous energy around DE&I, and rightly so. I mean, neurodiversity is a new topic. LGBTQ plus, can be with language and understanding and wanting to not make mistakes. But the thing is, we're human, right? So I think we need to give each other a lot of grace, but also invite people in, because there are a lot of allies in any diversity conversation who want to help, but sometimes need the invitation. They're not sitting there quietly because they don't want to. They sometimes don't know how to enter that conversation. Thank you. Hi.
Hi, I'm Anna from Mars, and I have a question for Beatriz, because you obviously come from a little bit further. So I was wondering, how would you, if you could tell us a little bit more about if you notice any differences when you moved to the Netherlands compared to your home country. How is it in Mexico? Do you, even if within the same company, are there differences?
Yes, there are, but to your surprise, it's not the way you would think so. It was for my surprise as well, when you are living in this country and get to know the culture. So I saw a lot more women within supply chain in Mexico. And I'm just going to put you a simple example. Whenever I'm in meetings here in the ports, with the terminals, people from the port, and so it's normally men, maybe one more women out there, and it's me. While in Mexico, there were more women, maybe not in higher positions, but they were more women, right there in the pool. So yes, there is a difference, right? Also, it's cultural things, right? That here women get more support as well from government, and so while in Mexico you need to keep working, but still there is differences.
Hi, I'm Carmen from Danone. Maybe just to explain a bit,
Yes, please.
right? Because you quoted the statistics saying that women normally apply when they're 100% sure, while men go ahead and dare to apply even if they're just 60% sure. So where I come from is that, yes, I recognize the statistics, but I have seen a similar behavior also from men who are coming from minorities.
Yep.
So I guess what I'm questioning is it about women or is it about minorities? And, being a woman or a man, as long as you are in a minority position, your level of confidence is actually lower.
Completely. I'm so pleased you stood up and spoke to your decision on that statistic. Yeah, this is a broader conversation. I mean, given the title, we're discussing the women's experience today for Amandine and Beatriz, but this is definitely about underrepresented groups. And it's not just visible difference, right? If you have a disability, if you're neurodiverse, there are so many lenses and intersectionalities. So if you're a person of color and then your gender, potentially a parent, potentially not, I'm not a parent. If you then are LGBTQ plus, there are so many layers. And I think sometimes the more intersectionality, the more difficult it is. But that statistic, as I say, it's a couple of years old. It was a social media trend, but it was thought-provoking in a conversation to go, okay, there is a difference here, and how do we address that confidence gap? But a really valuable comment, so thank you so much. This lady here, please.
Hey, and
Hi.
I really would
Hello.
like to add to your. I'm fully agreed. I think it's a minority. So I'm from Eastern Europe, Bulgaria. So working for Just Eat Takeaway, and before that, I have like within food delivery for 20 years, managing my own company. So become part of the group. Head logistics team with like 1,000 people.
Wow.
We have top line, but never get promoted because we always have been told that it's like small country. So saying you do an amazing job in Bulgaria, but like, oh, this is Germany or this is the UK, so it's a very different ball game. So I think it's really about the minority.
Yep.
And the interesting experience about Alliance is like why I'm still within the company. I was like, I want to move, I want to change. And then I was like giving up and want to leave the company. And then the CEO saying, no, you should stay and take a new role. Something that I didn't believe I can do, to be very frankly, because it was outside of my comfort zone or my knowledge. So it was like cross country, 20 countries. So I said, I can't do that. So back in days to Amandine, I think that we need to believe in ourselves and we definitely need to
Indeed.
have alliance
Yes.
and take more risks because
Indeed.
if you don't try, you'll never succeed. And I think this is the like maybe the end of the story there.
Exactly. Thank
I
you.
really appreciate that. And I love that take more risks. I'm 48. I have no left to give. But literally, that's why I've had the experiences around the world. That's why I've got to do some of the fantastic things I do. That's what's got me to this stage today. I've been very well behaved, by the way, today. But no, you have to take risks. And I think the more uncomfortable you feel, the more you've got to lean into it because that's when change happens. Otherwise, we're just cruising on.
Exactly.
And also like encourage yourself. Like if it was your friend coming to you and
Yeah.
asking you, should I apply? You would say, yes, go for it. You can have it. So let's say this to ourselves.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I have a question for you because you raised your hand that you are doing the gender blind CV, right? Can you share your experience?
Yeah, I think the reason is because I have experienced like the unconscious bias toward myself. And so just the takeaway, we have like diversity inclusion. So when you have to hire, you need to always have 1-to-1 ratio, men versus the females. But we have a training which is called unconscious bias.
Yeah.
And I realized that I have it for myself too.
Yeah.
So I always prefer women. I always prefer people that I think I can go alike and not like that they're going to challenge or opposite me or like would be difficult with me to work with. So what I ask recruiters is take out not only the gender, the picture, but even the names.
Okay.
So when I have the first interview, I have not done any precautions.
Yes, indeed.
About them.
What's your name?
Zornica.
Zornita? Who's going to take Zornita's experience away with them and try blind CV? Yeah, I think so, right? I think so.
Thank
But
you.
also, you mentioned bias. We all have bias. Bias is a natural human trait. It's how we address bias, how we acknowledge bias, and how we work to manage bias that's important. But I've been doing this for 15 years. I have bias. I must do somewhere. So I have to keep checking in on myself to make sure I'm making decisions that are rooted in fairness. Okay, one more question. We have time. for this one.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Beatriz from Mars.
Ah.
And,
We are, yeah.
Meet Beatrice.
Beatriz. Same thing. And actually, I have the same bias. I found myself that I was hiring for supply chain roles, and I wouldn't call it an unconscious bias. It's a very conscious bias. I want to hire women because I see that out of 100 CVs, 2, 3 are women. And I found myself actually to ask myself a question. I did the same thing. I asked to remove the picture, remove the name, remove anything. When you give me feedback from the panels or the interviews, just, take he, she away. So the candidate, the potential associate, like very, very neutral so that I don't have that bias. But then I find it also quite divisive because eventually I am going to see them.
Yeah.
I am going to
Exactly.
have that meeting. And I find myself then on the fence sometimes because I might have 2 candidates. Both of them are good for the role, but one is better. And sometimes my bias kicks in really strong saying the girl is maybe not 100% right, she's 98. So from a company standpoint, you might say, well, you should always take the best candidate. But is in the long run the right investment? Now, personally, I believe that the right investment is to favor the women because I should be pushing that target. But I also think it's a very divisive topic. Every time I talk about it, everybody's like, no, you should go for the best candidate. And that's it. So I wanted to take a little bit your take on this. How much should we benchmark and how much should we try to leverage as these two opposing forces in a certain way?
I think this aligns, it's in parallel to the quotas conversation because some women are so anti-quotas. But again, with the statistic from the World Economic Forum of 131 years, like something's got to give, right?
Exactly.
But let me put that to you. I believe it's merit-based, very quick, my answer, that yes, gender, diversity plays a piece, but ultimately it's who's the right person for the job. But please, over to both of you for that.
It's a super complex topic, right? And again, it brings us to what Sunaina mentioned, quotas, whether we agree or not. Because I don't have clarity on if I am 100% on quotas or not to start with. But yeah, I get you. And so we shouldn't do that, and we should go for the best candidate, for the 100% instead of the 98. But also, is the 98 a better fit, right? And do we as women want to have this parity running a bit faster and help on that if we can as well? So it's complex. I don't think you will ever have 100% the right decision, right? And you will have people against, people in favor. But sometimes we need to push it a bit.
Amandine, any
Yeah,
thoughts?
I second that. It's a very complex
It is.
situation. So I would add to the decision who has the most potential. Like if we give the right environment to the person, if we give the right tools to the person, who has the most potential?
Absolutely. And I think as the candidate, when I was in corporate and obviously being interviewed as a regional or global DEI leader, my first question used to be, are you hiring me because of what I represent? Now, I'm ethnically ambiguous, no one knows. So an organization could go, okay, we could cover 5 nationalities with this one, we got it. So I do, and I have questioned. I'm like, is it me? Because I know I'm pretty solid at what I do, I'm pretty badass in my career. And I see that, but is this my visuals, my optics, pushing me over compared to someone else? Because I wouldn't feel great if that was why I was being hired. But I think it's a very, very divided conversation. And I respect everyone's perspective because, I don't think there's a perfect fit there. But thank you. Are there any more questions? We have a few more minutes. Okay. I would like to say that the DEI conversation is very delicate. It is very sensitive. So if any of you have any questions that you would like to ask to the side of the stage, please approach any one of us because there are some things that I know people aren't comfortable saying in a group setting. With that, I would like to thank both of my guests. Beatriz, thank you. Amandine, thank you.
Yeah.
And I know some of you actually cancelled some other sessions to be here. So I appreciate you for that. I hope it was worth it. And I hope we've brought value to you and your learnings in DE&I. And as I say, happy to answer any questions later. But thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.